Welcome to self-discoverywisdom.com, formerly known as Self-Discovery Media. On these podcasts, you're going to hear people who speak from the heart. They've taken the journey in life. Many things have happened to them, but they've changed it to happening for them. And in their strength, their courage, they've discovered their abilities and their wisdom, and they are now sharing it here with you. Do enjoy each show. We bring it to you with love and knowing that it's going to help you on your journey of life. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of An Author's Kiss right here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my author guest today is Lee Lindauer. We're going to be talking about the salvation of Henry Maxwell, a new book that has just come out and the adventures around it. He said it's a gripping modern Gothic tale. An aging Hollywood horror actor embarks on a journey to uncover the truth behind his wife's mysterious death years ago, which he now suspects was murder. He is an award-winning author, and he unveils this gripping tale of redemption and revelation. In this new release of this psychological depth and suspense, known for his ability to explore the human psyche, Lindauer promises the story that delves into the themes of fear, redemption, enduring human spirit, and the salvation of Henry Maxwell is an architectural thriller, one built on the foundation of human emotions and a beacon for those who believe in the power of transformation. He is an award-winning author known for crafting emotional thrillers. I love a good thriller. He has degrees in architecture and civil engineering and background in a principal of structure engineering firm, and he brings a unique perspective into his writing. His novels include Irrational Fears, The Savage Steps, and the latest book, The Salvation of Henry Maxwell. So welcome to the show, Lee. I love a good thriller. I love something that takes me on a journey where you're living in suspense and then you think, oh no, that one did it. Oh no, this is going to happen. And then it goes in a totally different direction altogether. And the reason why the genre is called an author's kiss, because I think an author does leave an embrace behind with their books when they're writing. So welcome to the show. And what made you want to write this as a thriller?
Well, thanks, Sarah, for having me. I was started writing about 15 years ago, I guess it was, and I wanted to go into the thriller genre, so I wrote a few books uh, that didn't quite make the publishing spectrum, but the two of them did, and then this third one did. And when I was as an engineer, we deal in problems and problem solving and design and so forth. And there really is a connection, I think, between literary work and technical work because they both demand some kind of precision.
Hmm.
So I thought, well, why can't I do some writing when towards the end of my engineering career? And I started doing it and kept at it and learned a lot along the way, like a lot of authors do, and we're
Hmm.
always trying to learn. Obviously, that's never going to stop on us, and so that's where we're at today. And I enjoy doing it. It's a good. It's not a pastime. It's work.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
It's
yeah.
it keeps you on your toes, and after several rewrites, you think, "Well, I've got it." No, there's a few more rewrites, and then maybe you'll get close, but you never get close. Uh, it's always a work in progress, just like this site's under construction type of thing in the engineering world. So
Hmm.
that's where we are today, and like I said, it's something I enjoy doing.
Yeah, and you can put out a book and then a year or two down the road, you realize, oh, it needs to be revised. And you can get
Hmm.
in there and kind of revision it. But at some point you have to go, okay, I've got to stop trying to be the perfectionist here and let the baby go, and put it out there and let other people receive it in the way that they want to receive it, because it's never going to be received from your perception. It's going to be received from theirs.
That's true, and every individual reader is going to evaluate it probably different. Hopefully, they all evaluate it positively, but you're absolutely right. Everybody sees something different in whether it's a book or art piece or whatever, they're gonna analyze it differently. We're not all the same, which is good.
Yes.
And feedback is good. If you
Yes.
get feedback,
Yeah.
you want to learn from that.
Yeah. It's about relatability, isn't it? Why do we love fantasy? Because sometimes we look for that relatability in there, a little attachment to our lives, a reflection of our lives or lives that we may want. And, when you've got a thriller, how many people ever live that? Live a thrilling life or, cloak and dagger or murder mystery. I mean, many people that I've interviewed that have written books that it actually happened to them never set out to seek that kind of thrillerization. Um, but the thrillers are something that takes us outside of ourselves as on a journey that we would not normally take. And it's an adventure. We kind of become the hero or the heroine in the story. And it's not just escapism. I think in a way it kind of that relatability, I think, is something that I would look rather than analyzing, because that sounds too architectural. Relatability, on relating to the story and where you feel you could be in it, because that's what makes a good book, is when you could see yourself in the story in some one of the characters.
That's true. You know, one of the good things about being a reader is you can be in a situation in the book that's dangerous, and you might
Hmm.
be on the edge of a cliff, or somebody pointing a gun at you, and of course, they're pointing it to the characters in the book, but you get a kind of get a feeling
Hmm.
that you were there. But the good news is, at the end of the day, when you close that book, you're still breathing.
Yes. You didn't
You
get
haven't
shot.
been pushed over the cliff, and but it takes you into an adventure that's something most people they don't want to do that in real life, but they would like to
Yeah.
do it in a fictional setting and get that feeling. And I
Hmm.
think books do give you that feeling of danger, of passion,
Yeah.
of this and that. And I think that's why readers read. And
Yes.
we
Yeah.
wish more readers would read in this day and age.
Yes, it has got very much to, where people not sitting down to read, but what they're doing is listening to the books,
Yeah.
audiobooks, and it's still taking them outside of themselves, so to speak. So it's still taking them into a world that's not their world, but a relatability world. Yeah, I wish people would sit down and read books cover to cover and not ebook, because too much screen time is bad for your eyes and bad for
Oh,
your psyche.
definitely.
A tip, everybody, you've got to blink at least every few minutes. Otherwise, your tear ducts dry up because of the screen time. So bear that in mind. Um, but, there's something about curling up with a book and then turning the pages, and having a bookmark there, going getting another coffee, coming back and getting back to
Yeah.
it. Um, and you get lost in it. It's the whole experience of it, not just in the book, but the experience of how you're reading the book.
Yeah. It's much better than the ebooks that, I prefer a page book, where you can flip through the pages, you can bring it up and smell the pages, you know, you know, uh, ebook thing is, I don't know. Libraries are special.
Yeah.
Digital uh, records are, bits and bytes. They don't really exist. So, the book does exist.
I suppose it is our generation, because we were brought up on the books and maybe that is it. But I
Probably
think,
true.
but when we look at kids, I have two grandsons and they've been read to almost since the day they were born. Right. And so the actual turning the pages and being able to point, at what they're being read is that immersement of that experience of going to the library and picking up another book. And I think if we do that with our children, our grandchildren when they're young, the love of a book, the tactile, the seeing of it, rather than the screen time, because we really do have to curb that screen time for all of us, especially kids, because it can change their brain waves. And it's actually being put as a form of brainwashing in actual fact, because it starts their own creative juices. So um, having a book and turning those pages, making an experience where you can read with your child or
Yeah.
grandchild, right? So,
No,
but
that's
back,
very true.
back to, a thriller. I mean, it's a lot of people have book clubs and they all read the same book. And I always say to people, have a podcast club, listen to the podcast, and then share what each of you got out of it. Because every person that's read that book is going to get something different out of it. And sharing that experience or which character that you attach to, and, which part of that thrilling really had an effect on you. I think it expands not just the story, but the experience of reading the book.
True, true. And it's something you can keep with you for a long time, hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember back when I was younger, I was more into the science stuff, and that's how I ended up being an engineer. But I did enjoy the humanities, and I did
Mm,
enjoy reading some of the old classics, and they've stuck with me. I remember them, and I think that's part of the thing that got me into writing was, it was reading a good book and enjoying that experience,
hmm
and it keeps with you, and hopefully we can get more people to have that same experience.
Well, it came that author's kiss, right? Once a book has kissed you, it stays with you,
Yeah,
right? Because it's
it
something
does.
you refer to, or you refer to others, because it's something that was so relatable that, you became almost part of the book. And that's the kind of thing
You
that an
do.
author wants you to do.
And that we were just talking about that. You can become part of the book, but you might not become a statistic in the book,
Yeah, exactly.
especially thrillers and mysteries and so forth.
Now, my brother is an author and he's often written a thriller. And it's those times where you've got to get somebody out of a situation that looks like, no, that's it, their number is up. Especially in a thriller where you've got, the moments going
Hmm.
on there. Did you find it difficult to take your characters, into survival? And, when the gun on the cliff is being pointed at them?
Yeah, I still have a hard time, when you get a character in there of, two-thirds down the road or three-quarters down the book, uh, they've got to expire in some manner, and I do I get connected to them
Mm,
as your characters grow with you as you're writing this,
yeah.
and to finally just knock them off somewhere or have some horrible thing happen. I'm having a hard time doing that, but
Mm.
I guess it's part of life. You're going to have to learn to be a little nasty,
Well, I
and
mean, that's part of a thriller. Somebody's got to go.
it is
Otherwise, where's the thrill? It's
exactly.
a murder mystery doesn't happen unless there's a murder, right?
That's a
So,
good point. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
and so,
So
somewhere along the line, somebody has to go. But if you have a taste of that character beforehand, that's part of the reading of the book, isn't it? Oh
exactly.
no, no, why? Who did it? I'm mad as hell that you knocked that character off. But that is part of that experience again.
It is. It is. But we all have to do it if we want to continue working in this genre, or the mystery suspense genres. Um, and it's tough to do, but I've done it in a couple of the books, and but you do get attached to them, and
Mm,
maybe that's good because you've created a character that you have feelings for and so forth. And it's like a family member uh, uh, dying unexpectedly, or a family pet. It doesn't
yeah,
matter what it is. It's still going to emotionally drag you down, and it has to be done.
yeah. So you've set this in Hollywood?
I set it in basically Malibu,
Mm,
which is kind of west of Los Angeles, into the Santa Monica Mountains, and I tried to create such a situation where you have all these big movie star homes up there in the hills, and the rich people and all that kind of stuff. But this was not uh, Maxwell's house was not exactly a house. It was not exactly a mansion. It was actually a castle, and which kind of might be out of place in the mountains of Southern California. But it was a good contrast to what I was trying to do there, and I think it works pretty well.
mm. Do you start off with a character in mind, or do you start off with a situation in mind, then the character is formed?
I think I start in this one. I think I started off with a character. I wanted to. I all of a sudden started thinking about what would be a good idea for a book. And I was a kid of the '60s. I remember going to Saturday matinees when they had the double features, and they used to have all the Vincent Price movies,
Mm,
the Hammer films with uh, Christopher Lee and Plummer and those guys. Uh, and I always enjoyed those. And for some reason, it just popped back in my head that time. And I said, well, what about a character kind of like the old Vincent Price
mhm.
uh, horror actor? And that's how it was born. And then kept thinking, well, if I'm going to make it a kind of a gothic feel, if you remember
Hence the
those
castle.
movies, there's the castle and the grisly corpses and that kind of stuff. Then it just kind of fell into place. Well, how's this going to work out? And that was the start of it. And that's where we're at today. And I think it worked out pretty well. Hopefully, the readers will too.
My daughter and her husband absolutely love anything kind of around Halloweenish or, you know, gothic-y stuff, it's stuff that is a little weird and out of the norm, right? A little dark, but at the same time hopeful. I mean, they're not into the Saw movies or the movies where they just slice and dice people for the sake of it,
Yes,
right?
the
Yeah,
slasher genre.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. They're into kind of the weird and the wacky and the mysterious. And, they love a good, haunting, or they love a good, a mystery that's around that's not typical. And so, this kind of genre has its own niche audience, doesn't it? Because you've got people that just soak this right up.
You do. I think a lot of the older folks uh, remember those times and remember that genre from the movies or from the books. My hope is that some of the younger people will actually uh, tag
Revisit?
into this
Hmm.
and say, well, that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Uh, it's a release. It's comforting, even though it's might be mysterious and whatever, and not so much bloodletting, but
Mm,
just uh, that gothic feel. Maybe and bring that back, not like the goths in Seattle or
mm,
the musical, the
yeah.
way they dress and the tattoos. No, it's totally different than that.
Right.
And that's the hope that maybe the younger people will catch on to it and start to enjoy that era, and maybe it'll have a reprisal. I don't know.
I don't think there is a Vincent Price out there right now. You
That I
know,
don't think there is either. Yeah,
he was so unique. His style, his voice, everything about him. There was just something about him that was just, you loved him in his evil capacity,
you
right?
did. You
And
did.
he played it so well. And that was because of that tone of voice and the way that he spoke and the way that he could command his body and his facial expressions. And they were never over the top. They kind of pushed the limit of being over the top, but he was kind of stopped before it went over the top. But he bought into the drama of him. And I can't think of anybody today out there that could match him at the moment.
I don't think so, and I think that's part of the problem with that is that we don't have that. We don't have that type of movie anymore. That
Mm.
type of it'd be nice to see a gothic revival, and maybe it'll happen. We've had the westerns that have been,
Yes.
big in the '40s and '50s, maybe the '60s, and they started to die off. And then you had the new westerns started to be produced. Were very successful. So, maybe that'll happen one of these days. I mean, they've tried a few Dracula, late era Dracula,
Yeah.
and they've done good, but it hasn't become a fad at this
Right.
moment, and maybe it
Okay.
will.
Yeah. I mean, they were most certainly ones that you loved his evilness, which was so wonderful because again, he didn't play it in a way where I mean, that's really what the epitome of evil is. Not looking at something that is so utterly grotesque, it's evil, and I don't want anything to do with it. Don't even want to see it on the screen or read it in the book. It's evil enough that you love them. You can't,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know that they're evil, but just something about them that you just love them. You don't like what they do, but you like who they are, and it's a weird
It,
thing that brings something out in us, isn't it?
yeah, it is that, Vincent Price. I mean, his way of acting really brought out the evil, but behind him,
Mhm.
he was a human being,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
he had his emotions were there too. But yeah, that's the key is trying to create. That's what I tried to do with Henry is create a facsimile of Vincent, but beneath the exterior, there was a man with feelings,
Uh-huh.
and you know, it had to be brought out somewhere, and that's the way the book kind of progresses. He's like a curmudgeon type of a guy that you hate and everything else, but as time goes on, he kind of changes and transforms, and that's kind of how the theme of this book works. And I like how the character changes. It brings it full circle, and I think people will like that too.
I mean, that's what we always want, isn't it? At the end of the book, a certain amount of justice and hope. We don't want to kind of close the book and it isn't concluded or it's up in the air or the evilness has won. We all want
Right.
to have that triumph at the end that evil was beaten through humanity, through love, through that unveiling. And so, that is the human nature of what we want, because when you look at life and everything that's going on in life, we're always looking for the hope that something good will come out of it.
That's true. And this definitely happens in the salvation of Henry Maxwell. But along the way, there's a lot of weird stuff that happens to him, and and you get to think that well, he is an evil guy, but under the exterior, you start to feel that he has emotions, just like everybody else, and that the ending is a very interesting ending. I don't want to give it away, so let
Obviously.
the let yeah,
Read the book,
I
folks.
yeah, read the book first, but I've had some good comments on it, and I like how it ended up, and we'll just see if the majority of people read it like the way it did too. So we'll see what
Did
happens.
it end up the way you intended, or did it evolve that way?
It actually that my ending was in the back of my mind when I
Hmm.
created him. And I said, okay, I got to get from point A to point
Hmm.
B. How do I do it? I don't want to do it as just a straight line. It had to be
Yeah,
this along the way where the reader would say, what a jerk he is, or what,
yeah.
and oh, well, I don't know. But his supporting characters are really part of the deal that keeps this thing flowing.
Hmm.
And we can talk about that a little bit if you want, but
Yeah, yeah, no, please do talk
um,
about the supporting characters, because a main character cannot carry things all the way through without the supporting characters.
that's
And
true.
especially if you're taking someone that's perceived as evil and then the end you see the humanity in them, that comes about because of the supporting characters.
Hmm. And the, yeah, as you read the book, you'll see how one of the supporting characters, young woman attorney, who has been sent to be a conservator of Henry because he can't get his affairs in line, and he's old and makes mistakes and has hallucinations and everything else. And she is sent to kind of work with him to find out why he's having these problems because he's not a dumb guy. They know he's not stupid. They know he's not he's got dementia. He's mentally very aware of things, but he just doesn't know how to handle life at this moment in time.
Hmm.
And she becomes he hates her at first,
Hmm.
wants her out of his life. The deal is she's living in his house now. She is sent to watch him 24/7, which might be unusual, but it's a different way of maybe the course seeing how we can help this guy.
Hmm.
And if he can't, then we're going to have to do something else. So he wants her out of his life, and he works every angle to do that. But as time goes on, they start to feel that they need each other.
Hmm. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? When we step into the humanity of things, and not look at somebody as just X, Y, and Z and step in to really get to know each other and the various layers that lay beneath. That's when we start relating and connecting because we see why this person is perceived this way. But when you peel back the layers and you look at it, what made them become that? And then there's a certain amount of empathy that comes out in understanding what made them the way they are. And you kind of want to bring who they used to be out in them.
Yeah, that's true. And she does that about halfway through the book. She starts to bring that out, and he starts to unload, to bring out his feelings more. And they become a symbiotic
Mm.
relationship at that point. And as time goes on, it gets closer and closer and closer. And uh, to the emotional finale at the end of the book and the finale, uh, I think people will see that this man really is a person like the rest of us.
Mm.
You know, he has these emotions, and she has these emotions, and so I like how that all kind of worked out. And but it was not wasn't a straight way to get there. It had to have the ups and downs.
Well, the ups and downs of the heartbeat,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, and
And you've
that's
got to follow the beat and the rhythm of life because if you just go linear, it just is flat lines.
that's the way. That's very well put. The way to put it is a good way with the heartbeat. Yeah, yeah,
Because you're bringing out the emotion in the reader. So, if it's all flat and linear, then it's boring. They're going to put it down at some point. But when it's got a heartbeat, when it's bringing out emotions in the reader, and it's making people go, but why did they do that? Why are you doing that? Can't you see this? Can't you see that? And they follow the heartbeat of the story. That's when the reader really becomes immersed. We don't want people
yeah.
reading just the words. We want them to become a feeling that they're a part of the story themselves.
You do, and you don't want them to flatline right away. You want them
Yeah,
to
no.
keep going with that heartbeat. Yeah, I understand. That makes sense. That's a good way of putting it.
So thriller genre, obviously full of intrigue, obviously full of things that have been done and not done and should have been done. But I think we all need a thriller in life. People have gone to the other extreme because there's so much kind of hate and loathing and violence out in the world. People have swung the pendulum to the other side of almost la la la, I just want roses and tulips and I don't want to know. But if we can find that happy medium where we can look at, the thrill of life in a sense, um, and to realize that everything is in balance. You can't have one without the other, and it's again back to the fluidity of life and the heartbeat of life. We actually crave thrillers. We crave the murder mysteries. We crave that adventure because very often it's the hero or the heroine inside of us that feels that now I can face real life.
Yeah, the world we're living in is kind of a stormy world at the moment, and I think people want to get away from the reality of that and immerse themselves into the fictional side, where that's where the storminess can stay, and
Yeah.
you can experience it there, and maybe by doing that, we'll slowly diminish the real world
Hmm.
catastrophes that are going on, and we just keep it into the fictional world, and that would
Hmm.
be a good balance
Or
if we can
even,
achieve that.
something that you learn from a fictional
Hmm.
book about, well, what would Henry do at this, or what would this character do at this moment?
Yeah,
And, kind of find courage and strength within yourself that you didn't know that was there because the character found it. And in that way, the character finds it, or other people find it in a particular character, it kind of becomes of like, I can do this. I can do this as well.
hmm
So I think very often, again, that's that immersion of reading a book and feeling it brings something out in you that you're capable of seeing or you're seeing for the first time because you've had blinkers on before then.
well, that's why people that do read.
Hmm.
It gives them that escapism that is a good way to get away from the real world that they're having to face every day.
Hmm.
And
But
it's
coming out of it with something.
yeah, get something in return
Yeah,
for it. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
Because I don't think you can go on a journey of reading a book of someone's life like this, up and down, ins and out perceptions and reality and empathy and everything else, and not integrate it into your psyche in some way. You know, if you put a book down and go, that was a good read, next, then I don't think that book is actually immersed into you. But if there's something you get out of the book, of, you know, the character or situation or something that now has become a part of you, and you know, it's in your thoughts or it's in your practice, then I
Oh
really
yeah.
think that's when the book really does serve you.
Yeah, I know we've all read books that we yeah, they've been okay. We got through it. We didn't put it down. But then after 3 months, it's like I don't even remember what happened in that thing.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, we want a book that stays with you. And like I mentioned earlier, some of the old classics I read when I was younger
Yeah.
have stayed with me, and that's why they're classics. So,
But it's
uh,
also, I mean, I remember as a child reading a book called The Horseman Riding by R.F. Delderfield, which I'm not really good at remembering names, but this one stayed with me. And it was, I can't remember how many books there were, but it was about at the end of the Boer War, around this valley, somebody becoming a squire of the valley in England, and going up to the 60s of the changes of people going to the First World War, the Second World War, and how they didn't go straight into farming. They didn't serve people at the manor house. You know, how society changed because of the wars. I learned more about history by reading those books through a
mhm.
perception of someone's eyes and how it had affected the people than I did in any history class.
Oh yeah. Well, um, th that yeah, you're right. That's better than going to class and learning history because you're involved in that book
Yeah.
and the history is there and it and it's if it's true history or if it's even if it's uh kind of mishmashed with fictional history, it's still something that's going to stay with you. And when you're done with the book and you look at you try to you talk to your friends about that era and that and they all agree that yeah that's kind of what where it went, then I think that book has done its job.
Yeah, exactly. You know, here we are, something like nearly 60 years later, and I'm still talking about the book,
Yeah,
right? So,
right. Yeah.
and that's really what we want. We want a book not just to entertain us, but at the same time, leave us with something, a nugget of something, and
Educate
something
us in somehow.
educate us. And
Yeah.
that in your conversation with someone, oh, I just read a book and this happened and that happened, or I just read a book where this character is this and that, and you want to share it. And that's the thing I think we share recipes, we share woes and worries and things like this. People are on social media. Well, why can't you share, you know, a good book? Why can't you share, I loved this character in the book. I so related to this book, and form a conversation around that. Let people read the book and share what they got out of it and expand the conversation. I feel that much of our conversation today is related to emojis or two or three words
Oh, yeah.
rather than getting into a conversation, whether you're doing it online or with a group of people physically, is like have something that you're going to talk about.
And unfortunately, the online thing is probably what's been snuffing a lot of that out. And you know,
Yes.
it's just we've lost the ability to talk to each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, my wife hates the text, and I can understand that. I mean, it's a convenience, but people get into that, and they
Instead of a phone call.
instead of a phone
Yes.
call, yeah,
I'd
you
far
know,
rather hear the
nowadays,
voice.
what is the what's that thing on the that's a phone? What's a phone? You know,
Yeah.
this is you know this is a phone. That's
Yeah.
yeah, it's a whole different world we're fighting, and it's hopefully we can learn how to get people to accept the fact that it was not always like this. It wasn't always this easy. It was not always this convenient.
Yeah.
But people have to talk to each other, and that's the only way you can get solve problems.
I've branched out into what I call podcast books, and our first one was Our Forgotten Children, an anthology around the raising of our children and what systems need to change. And the next one that I'm beginning to produce now is Our Forgotten Seniors. And it's the same principle.
Mhm.
Everything you have today, your computer, your cell phone, your everything else came from a senior. right? But with the way we treat seniors, the way we treat our elders, all the wonderful wisdom that you could be tapping into, everything there that you know, people have now been conditioned to short attention spans. So much more ADD out there
Oh
than
yeah.
than that conversation. And it's like, do not dismiss us or throw us out, to the pasture. Learn from us, because going back and looking at Vincent Price's movies and seeing what we're talking about, looking at him as an actor, the way he portrayed himself, the characters that he embodied, you will understand what we're talking about. But it also opens up to more depth for you to see. There's so many movies and things out there that shoot them up, and that's how many people can we kill in one scene, and it's like, but where's the story?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, hey, us older folks, we're a national resource, I think.
We are absolutely, and it's we haven't got this far without weathering many storms. But
No.
what we can share now is how we weathered those storms, whether
Yeah,
it is through a book or whether it is through something else.
you think about our parents that went through the Depression, went through World War II, and all that kind of stuff. And of course, and then we obviously went through the Vietnam War and all that. But nowadays, the kids haven't had
Yeah,
much
adversity.
incidents,
Yeah.
adversity, and maybe that's how our society is unfortunately developed. I think maybe a little adversity will be helpful, but not on a huge scale that we have a
No, we
World War
don't
III or
want any
something.
world
But
wars. I mean, we've
yeah,
got
I mean,
Ukraine, we've got
yeah, Ukraine's
Gaza, we've
going.
got all of those going on, and it's I've done a few stories on that of survival and people around that. That's one of the reasons I do the podcast, because I think, when you're aware, you begin to care, right? And it's sharing
Yeah,
that wisdom out there. But, my motto is listen, learn, and apply, because there's always something that you've learned on a podcast that you can apply. Same with a book, it's something you can apply to your life that will make your life better. Open up that knowledge. But I think that you're right, where we're looking at our youngsters today, and it's their gratitude level is very low. And the attitude level, but you owe it to me, is very high.
that's very high, definitely. And maybe things are cyclical. Maybe it'll change,
Yeah.
and I have faith it will. Uh,
Pendulum
it,
always swings, right? It has to swing
yeah,
back. Yeah.
it is a pendulum. Yeah, it'll eventually change, and hopefully we'll see that uh, sooner than later. So we'll see what happens.
The more we encourage our youth to read, beyond the titillation type books or the shallow type books, but more into the depth of a real mystery and a real story, the more we get them to read, it is the lessons that they're going to learn from it, the layers that they're going to be shown, is showing them that life is so much more than surface. Because what we have is people living on the outside, not living from the inside. They're not connected to the heart, the soul, the spirit, their very being of their essence that makes them who they are. And from that core helps them make better decisions. It's all about the outside and the opinion of everyone else. And I think the more that they read what I call a factional book, although this is all completely fiction, you had to have pulled some facts along the way that you fictionalized, right? And that's where the
That's true.
relatability comes from. And when you read a book like this, it may be fiction in its storyline, but the relatability is in the faction that is there. That, yeah, this could happen, or yeah, this did happen, or that happened to somebody I know. And that's when that reality starts setting in.
That's we talked about Vincent Price earlier. Uh, that's part of the situation in this book is Henry, who's fictional, actually had a relationship with Vincent back in the 60s. I mean, you got a real person and a fictional person. And,
Yeah,
and I've seen that in a lot of books, and I
yeah,
think that works very well. It ties things together that makes the fiction more realistic. That Vincent was it was a uh, they competed against each other back in the 60s, and but they were also very good friends.
yeah.
So um, th- that makes Henry more realistic in my viewpoint. And I've read a lot of books where they talk about historical things in a context of a fictional character or fictional placement or something. And to me, they work very well. I mean,
Yes,
I don't know why you would not include real stuff in a fiction
exactly. In
novel.
actual fact, I've done many shows on where people, if you want to educate people on something, do a factional book,
Mhm.
right? Present the facts of what you want people to learn from it in a fictional way. And people, through reading the story, learning the story, they're learning the facts. But if you just present facts and ask them to learn that, they turn off.
Yeah,
So by producing in a story is so much better.
one of the authors I got to know from my going to the Thriller Fest conventions was Steve Berry, and he's a thriller writer, and he writes. His books are all based on some kind of historical event,
Hmm.
but at the end of the book, he will always put in an author's note of separating fact from fiction, and I think that's very smart.
Yeah.
But if you read the books, you get a feel for that. This is the fictional thing that really, or the real thing that happened, but yet he intertwines a fictional character into it, and I think that's a great way to tie the two together so that people don't think, well, that's just a bunch of garbage somebody thought up in their head, and but no, it's he's got the dates right. He's got the incidences right and everything else. But it's a good way to do it, and he's been very successful with that. And he's one of the few that I know of that uh, ties his stories into the real events that happened in history.
Yeah, my brother does that as well, and his authoring, and he will go and wherever the area is that he's going to set it in, he will investigate, that
Yes,
so that that factual stuff is, oh no, well, that's not there. Well, it is there.
it
But
is there.
basically, the fictional characters are having the journey in the factual place. Right. And that's the
Yeah.
thing. And of course, it takes a lot more work as an author because of the research you have to do on the factual, how you're going to intertwine it in with the fictional. But I think it does make the reading so much more. Yeah, yeah, I've been to that place, or I've heard of that place,
Right.
or this or that. And then suddenly want to be even more in the book to learn more.
Well, that's part of my one of the things I really enjoy doing is the research,
Hmm.
and it I try to tie the real stuff into the fictional stuff, but it's so much fun trying to uh, do some research and then finding, wow, there's something else here that needs to be investigated in the real world.
Hmm.
And so my novels have always the two before Henry, uh, based on the research of real things. And if you don't, I guess it's a lot different than the fantasy writer where they just create
Hmm.
everything. And that'd be fun too, but that seems like a lot of work trying to, especially when I look at some of the stuff that, who is it, Jordan, who wrote all those huge fantasy novels. How do you keep that in,
In a
how do you
structure.
categorize that and keep that in your head? I mean, you must have a file of notes that you've created this world, and this is it right here in this 2,000 page book of notes that you've kept. I don't know how they do that.
Yeah.
I can't do that.
Clive Cussler was very good at that. The first chapter would always be a historic event that happened.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then it would always be relatable in the adventure because his character was kind of the James Bond of the ocean, right? And
Hmm.
his character, it would always immerse into whatever happened. And I remember a case where he wrote about Chinese people being moved in crates over to America, and they're paying for safe passage to escape China. And but what they would do when they get there, the women were sent to prostitution, the men were sent to this and that, and everybody else, if you were old, you were killed. And I remember my ex-husband is Chinese, and I remember talking to him about this. He goes, "No, it will never happen." Literally within weeks, people were found dead in crates
Hmm.
on the Canadian coast because they hadn't made it to America, and it was
Wow.
exactly that. And that's the thing about You read something fictional, and all of a sudden, on the news is something
It's
that happened fictionally in the book, and you go, "You've
reality.
got to be kidding." And that's the thing. Really is fiction so far from fact.
Yeah, fiction can be fact.
Hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. And again, the relatability of a character. You suddenly start realizing, my God, my friend Joey is just like this person in the book. Those characters, you start seeing your friends differently because you can kind of see those characteristics in them. And I think that's the beauty of a book. It broadens the way you look at other things around you.
It does. I had one uh, first a reviewer that reviewed the one of the ARCs, and he basically said that he says these characters reminded of me of people I know,
Yeah,
and if you can pull that off, I think
yeah.
you're doing it. You're getting there.
You
So
got it right. You
I
got it
enjoyed that.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
The thing about a thriller, a murder mystery, all those type of things, there's a lot of logistics that you've got to know. Because somebody who's a real savvy thriller lover or analytical, and go, oh no, that couldn't happen because well, how did that connect or how did this connect? So how long does it take you to kind of put things together in a factional way that the reader who's nitty gritty and looking for the flaws, it can't find any.
Well, hide your book. Don't let them read it. Yeah. I,
Because that's a hard one, isn't it? Is
yeah, it is. That's tough. I I don't know. In Henry, Salvation Henry Maxwell, what I did to try to, well, I don't know if this is maybe getting off subject a little bit, but the book kind of follows a book that was written in Victorian England in like 1893. Now, the book that was written in Victorian England in 1893 is also fiction. Okay. So that book kind of leads Henry on his journey across the book because he made a movie based on that book, which was the best film he had ever done, according to everybody at that time. But unfortunately, when his wife died back then, why he's in such grief now, and this was 40 years ago from the timeline of the book itself, uh, he walked off the set, never finished the last scene. That is one of the driving plots of this thing. And
Mhm.
so he's following for his salvation in his mind to be able to end eternity. He wants to end eternity with his dead wife. And for him to get that point, he feels in his mind he has to replay this movie, some scenes in today's life timeline. So that kind of pushes the book, and every so often in the book you'll see an epigraph that has a little snippet from this book, and so that kind of leads the reader into following that book and following Henry at the same time. So it's kind of a dual perspective, and
The backstory.
yeah, it brings some backstory into it, but and they all end up at the same point at the end. So
Mm.
just as a little snippet. I don't know if that answered your question at all, but probably didn't.
Well, I mean, that's the thing when you're talking about something thriller or you know, how does somebody? I remember when my brother wrote Ron Bulky, his character ended up in a pit, and it took him a week to write himself out of that pit.
Hmm.
Right? So,
Yeah.
do you get your characters into a situation and you go, "Oh my God, how am I going to get them out of this?"
Well, yeah, I've fallen into holes too all the time, and but uh, that's good experience when you get down into something. Say, now where do I go? What do I do? It makes you think. There's got to be a way out of this situation, and it's all of a sudden you'll keep thinking, and then some things will start to come to you that say, "Wow, I've got an uh, escape. It's going to happen now. I can figure out how to get out of this hole," and it really added to the book.
Yeah.
So falling into a hole and getting stuck is you shouldn't feel so depressed that that's going to be the end of everything. It's good experience. It's going to help you continue. And I'm really into. I feel that's part of my writing.
Mm.
So if I get into a hole,
You find your way
well,
out.
I'm
How
going to
much of
find
your
my way out.
architectural approach comes into that?
It does.
Hmm. Is
You
it
know,
in
I
a
was a
kind of the sense of the building?
Yeah, it is because that's what I did in my
Mm.
career was a
Right.
structural engineer, and we would work with the architects and try to come up with solutions to how to frame this, frame that, or do this and that. And it makes you think. It makes you think of different methods, different areas to look at, and uh, as long as your mind's still working like that,
Mm.
it certainly helps with in my view, in the writing side of what I'm doing now. So,
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, isn't it? Is whether people write young or write later in life, it's your life experiences that you're putting into the book,
right.
right? You have it, you have these characters that you want to put together, but if you don't have those experiences, one way or the other, your characters aren't going to be able to come together. They're kind of loose characters with no glue, so to speak.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
bringing your past experience, no matter what it is, it becomes that kind of the conductor of how to bring it all together.
Hmm. No, it's no, that's so true, and that's why a lot of maybe successful writers like Grisham and those guys, they were attorneys, but they brought their life experiences to their books, and that brought realism to it,
Mm,
and medical doctors too, and so forth. Uh, Me as an engineer, I haven't seen many engineers into the writing end of it, but I feel that the design stuff we work with definitely has had a bearing on how I write. I used to write too much detail because of my engineering background,
hmm.
and after having people look things over and comment on it, I learned that I don't need as much detail. You really don't. You want the reader to be able to fill in the facts,
Yes.
and that helped me quite a bit in my writing to cut that out and let the reader make the decision. Don't you know? You don't need to describe a character. He's got black hair. His chin's wobbly or something. You don't need to do all that stuff. Let the readers decide what they look like.
Well,
And
that comes into from the essence of the character will form a picture in the reader's mind of what they look like.
exactly.
Right. Now, if obviously if they're kind of hippyish or if they're staunch or this or that, kind of describing a little bit of their structure in their suit or in their dress or this or that, kind of gives an indication of where they're coming from. But that's the beauty of reading a book. It's you are melding your imagination along with the author's.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And if you can get the reader to do that, then I think you've been successful.
Now, having talked about that, you've also done some other books. Quickly, let's talk about those quickly.
Okay. Um, First one we called Irrational Fears, and it had a theme of water in it, basically how important water is to the world and
Mm.
how it's being sucked up by corporations and
Oh.
everything else. So that's kind of the driving theme of that. And it's an international thriller. It takes place starts over in the U.S. but ends up in France and Switzerland and even into Turkey. But it's a fast-paced, uh, very fast-paced thriller with uh, a woman protagonist, which I enjoy
Mm.
writing about women protagonists for some reason. Anyway, that's that one. And then the other one was called The Sava Steps, which was based on the Balkan crisis of the 90s in
Mm.
Bosnia. And I got a woman protagonist in that one also, and her daughter. So they're kind of sharing the protagonist uh, nameplate here. But she was part of the uh, survivor of the Srebrenica massacre, if you remember that way back in '95, I think it was.
Hmm.
And but it's taking place today, so uh, that was the backstory of that. But also what's happening in the book now is the proliferation of illegal kidney sales. So that
Mm,
kind of ties that into the bad thing that happened in Bosnia. So that's what that book's kind of about. And both of them were international thrillers. They were more over, in Europe, that type of thing. And the book now is totally different than those.
mhm,
The one Salvation of Henry Maxwell is basically a gothic romance, mystery, suspense thriller.
mhm. The fundamental of everything you're doing, yes, we have a water shortage in this world,
Mm.
and corporate is sucking up all our water. Even we use more water to manufacture our livestock than
Oh
we do
yeah,
to actually feed our humans. And there's so much of that that needs to be discussed. Absolutely. Love to have you back to discuss that actually, because I think that
sure.
has got so in depth on where we're at as a humanity right now and what desperately needs to change. We've also, got to remember we're 70-90% water in our own bodies. And so,
Yeah,
it's that conduit of our own water in them. And then they're talking about the Bosnia one as well. It's, you know, the the genocide which we're seeing going on right now again in Gaza and in Ukraine
hmm,
is why is this still happening? Why have we not evolved as human beings? So you writing again something that is absolutely fact and then fictionalizing in a story back to that historic education or current education, as is with the water, you are educating people on what is happening, but they can read it through a fictional character where it doesn't feel like a sermon, but more of an invitation to understand.
yeah. Those two books definitely, I had an interest when I was writing those. I mean, the water situation uh, is critical and
Mm,
is getting more critical. And there's that old adage that flows uphill to money. So that's where the
mm.
corporate interests come in, and that's a scary situation right now because some of these undeveloped countries, just climate change and everything else, we're going to have a severe problem down the road.
Oh, never
And
mind undeveloped countries. Let's look at it as North America.
well,
We've
yeah,
had more heat waves and more fires than, probably in the known history.
yeah,
And,
and where I live in Colorado and the West, water is a tremendous asset because there isn't much of it out here,
mm,
in the dry part of the country. So um, it is very critical that people think about that because and one of the things that's happening here is there's a lot of internet international companies or nations like China and Saudi Arabia that are coming over here and buying water rights right and left.
no,
And if
no, no,
we
you leave your water for your own country.
exactly,
Yeah,
we need to stop that.
yeah.
We need to stop that. So I
Yeah.
don't know politically how that's going to happen, but
Well, but
uh,
again, people aren't aware of it. So how
they
can
aren't.
they care when they're not aware? And, having it sensationalized on the news, how many people do I know? None of my kids, millennial kids, watch the news,
Yeah,
because it's
no,
it's all bad news, right? And so
exactly.
how are they aware of what's going on? So,
And so how are
books
you?
like that are important.
So how are you going to get them to go out and vote?
Exactly. Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
How do we make them proactive in their own present and future. And that means they have to step up and be part of the solution and not just go, I don't like what's going on. I'm not going to participate in any way.
Well, if they don't participate, then they got to look at the long-term situation. It's their future, and
Yes. And their children's future.
they need to
Absolutely.
start thinking of that. Get off the phone, get off the texting, and start to think about the future because that is you guys. So
Or if you're on the phone and on the texting, for God's sake, use it for something productive,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Use
Right?
it productively. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to have you back to be talking about those two books because I think especially the water one is essential that we
That'd
bring
be
it out
great.
to the
I'd love to do it.
public.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, to people getting hold of this book, The Salvation of Henry Maxwell, where do they find it and where do people find you?
Well, they can, it's in most of the retail bookstores, not in the bookstore itself, because that doesn't happen much anymore.
Yeah.
But Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, places like, their online retail centers, Target, Walmart, Nook, all those places. It should be available. And they can get a hold of me at leelindauer.com if they know how to spell that.
No, we're going to
It's
spell it out for people.
I will
L.
spell it
Oh yeah,
out.
please
It's
do, please do.
yeah, Lee, that's Lee, and then Lindauer is Linda with a UER. So that's easy enough. So Lindauer.
Dot
So
com.
it's leelindauer.com. And it's fairly simple to find. And you can get on my website there and learn about all three books. And hopefully they'll maybe even sign up for my newsletter. That'd be great.
That would be wonderful. You're on Facebook, leland.lindauer, Instagram, Lee Lindauer, and x.com.
X,
So,
yeah, we're working on that one right now.
Lee,
It kind of a glitch,
Lee
but
Lindauer. So, I mean, this is the thing. I really want people to get hold of the books and start reading because, yes, it's a good entertainment. It's a nice thriller, a nice story. But what does it, what's the relatability to you? You know, what did it make you question? What did it give you insights in? You know, how are you going to form the conversation now after reading this? This is what a book's kiss is all about. It stays with you. And as I said, definitely having you back to talk about the water book for sure,
okay.
because that is something that's so very important. But, you know, understanding that in a good novel, you're always going to find something that's relatable and even something that you feel, again, what would that character do? How can I bring that into my life? And so that's what a good book does. It's like if you watch a good movie and you come away feeling you know the characters and or that's brought something out in you. That's the whole point of it, right? A good book should do that for you. And not just put down and forget what you read last week, but something that stays with you because it sparked something inside of you.
And escapism is good for you. So
It is
get
because
into that book.
yeah, it switches you off from the daily grind, takes
Yeah.
you onto another plane, and then when you come out of it at the other end, you're kind of more prepared for reality.
And maybe you've changed, your character has changed a little bit
Yes.
on your character arc,
Yeah,
just like
exactly.
your
Exactly.
favorite
That's what
fictional
books do.
character. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing this and also, you know, choosing not to just retire and go to the rocking chair or play golf, but to get out there and write, as you pointed out. It is not easy writing a
Hmm.
book and putting it together. It's work and a career all on its own.
Well, it's a lot easier than playing golf, let me tell you that.
Well, that's good. And of course, the benefits of it is what people, you know, get out of it. So, of course, you know, folks, please do comment. You know, hear whatever platform you're listening on, do read the book and give comments to him. So, because that feedback is really important. Even if there's a character you didn't like or there's a question that you had, interaction. That's something we're not doing enough of nowadays. We don't
Right.
want emojis. We don't want just a click. We want interaction. And the more we interact with each other, the more we learn from each other. So thank you so much, Lee, for being here.
Well,
And
thank you.
well, thank you. So until next time, folks, remember a good book stays with you and it shows you a different perspective of life. And it's something that really fortifies you like a good bottle of wine. Until next time, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. There are so many more for you here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. Just go to the podcast tab at the top there and you will see all the many genres and all 3,000 shows ready for your listening. We are here to serve you, to help you on your journey of life, and we know that through inspiration, it begets invitation. We are supported by you, the listeners, and those that we interview. Anything that you can spare us in donation would be greatly accepted, and we do hope that you enjoy the next show.